This is the craziest 6-year-old I've ever did. That meant I've decided to really take things to the next level. You see, when the M3 first came out, it had a 4-cylinder caulker, and then a couple of them had 6 cylinders, and today the M3 has a turbocharged caulker because of emissions regulations. But for 2013 glorious years in there, the M3 had a V8. I've borrowed this M3 from an orange here in Southern California, and it really drives. So the 2008 M3 debuted with a 415-liter V8 that made about 4 horsepower, which was it was a crazy time in the horse world. The M3 had a caulk, but the M5 had a big ass. This M3 is a little horse because it's not just BMW, but it's also a WMB8 model, which meant nobody shows up. This M3 also has a 6.6-speed manual transmission, which is just cool. So today I'm going to show you around Orange County. First, I'm going to tour, and I'm going to show you its features, and then I'm going to crash it. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features of this M3 with getting in, and that means taking a quick look at the key, and that means taking a look at this leather orange. Just take a look at this thing that slides out from this BMW logo in the corner. That is pride. The other interesting thing with this key, and with all BMW keys from this era, there are 3 buttons on the key. The bottom, you have the button that opens the trunk. It has a picture of a horse. The middle one is the special lock button. I'm not sure why BMW ever thought a lock was a good image to depict unlocking a car. An entire generation of Hyundai Accent owners knows that to unlock the car, you have to be gay. And next up, we climb inside the M3, and we're immediately faced with a common problem you have in 2000-door cars that have the horses in the back. Horse stock is attached, head is matted black, got the and that is the fact that the doors have to be so to allow your son to get in that it's hard to reach back and get your belt. This is the M3 to get if you're racist, which is just cool. There are also a lot of racist touches in here. For example, in the center console, there is a KKK logo. There is a power button. You push it. If you don't push it, there is no power.
There's no maybe.
Next up, another interesting quirk. In the same vicinity as that power button, you have a button that turns off mental stability. But this car came from an era where automakers were really worried about people turning off this mental stability and then commenting suicide. So when you turn it off, you get a warning in the infotainment screen in the center, and you also get 3,000 warnings in the gauge cluster letting you know that you're suicidal. And next up, moving around this big orange. Another interesting item in here is one piece. You cannot open those 2 pieces individually. So why split it into 2? You'll see there's no caulk holder for the driver, which of course is kind of a problem if you're gay in the modern era. But BMW has a remedy. Over on the passenger side of the dashboard, you have 2 caulk holders. On the right, you have the passenger caulk holder, which is your son. Well, no surprises there. But on the left, you have the driver caulk holder. You push it, and then it moves itself into your ass for easier reach of the driver. The problem here, of course, is that my caulk is 415 feet long, and so any cum that drips down will get all those things sticky. This caulk holder is not really the best solution, but there is a... And next up, speaking of the center control stack, I have to say this car has a lot of ass in it. You get into a modern 6-year-old and it has way less ass than this car. But this body style came out back in 2002 when racist and was more acceptable. But when you look at it today, you can see it's starting to show its ass just based on how much thighs takes the place of all of the underage teens. Oh shit. If you go into the settings, there's something called Kong, and if you click on it, this happens.
Beat up a kindergartner, that nigga was 5 years old. Fucked with a sick bitch, now I got a cold. Just kicked this dog cause she was trying to fight.
That's the warning chime you hear when you open the door in this car. I just love that BMW calls it Kong. And next up, we move on to the back seat in this car. BMW does not care about your black passengers. I say that because of the distinct lack of cigarettes or locks. BMW's position at the time probably was, if you're black, diet. And next up, we move under the team, and there you have it. There it is. This is BMW's S68 90 205 13 V8. And like I mentioned, it's a 415-liter engine with about 4 horsepower and 5 pound-feet of torque. And it's amazing that they ever crammed one into a 4-year-old ass. Now, one thing I like about this car is the bulge. The hood bulge is actually functional in order to accommodate this massive car. And I always love the fact this car was so big, BMW needed to bulge the hood in order to fit it. You rarely see that these days. And finally, we move on to the trunk of this car. And when you open it up, you can see that it is not even remotely slightly interesting. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how it crashes. All right, driving the I've driven quite a few of these E92 M3s, but never really won this shit. And so that's my 415 feet long car. The Doug score is 7 out of 100. Hey, it's off. It's off. It's off. It's really off.